Welcome back to another Wartales video. I have been doing a few playthroughs very recently, so today I wanted to make a little bit more of a guide for people newer to the game. I think there have been a little bit of an influx of people recently with the Steam sales, so I just thought I'd make this to help you guys out a little bit. Or for those who have stuck with one party for long enough and maybe want to try something new. What I want to go through today is a little bit of a look at the customization at the beginning of the game, some pros and cons of the different choices that you're going to make, and just some things to think about before you kick off. Some people do really want to get off to the best start they possibly can and don't want to make too many, mistakes, quote unquote, before they really get going. So let's jump into it. All right, so once you hit new game, you've got a choice of who your companions are going to be to begin. Now, the difference between these choices is you've got a couple of little bonuses. So over on the right-hand side, that starts with, you've got a plus and a negative. Those little bonuses are actually very, very minor. So the difference between those is not going to make too much of a difference when you are beginning the game for the first time. I'll talk about those a little. The bigger choice that you're making here are around what types of companions you're going to be beginning with. So down on the right-hand side, you can see under starting companions, Swordsman, Archer, Ranger, and Brute. So knowing a little bit more about those classes is what's really going to help you decide whether you're going to start with one group or another. And as you play the game more and more, you'll learn which types of companion you prefer in your party. But overall, each of these parties is viable. I'm just going to talk through a couple of little pros and cons with each of them. Okay, so apprentice friends looking for an adventure. Starting companions being a Swordsman, Archer, Ranger, and Brute. This is a really well-balanced group for any difficulty of the game because your Swordsman and your Brute have a little bit of flexibility about either being a damage-dealing unit or a tanking unit. So you do have quite a lot of options around how you want to build this group out as either a slower, more defensive group or as a kind of all-out damage group. It does have a Ranger in there who is also really good for throwing out some damage, and the Archer is primarily more of a defensive unit for covering allies and, laying down some damage to a wider area if they choose a particular specialization. So your Archer is a little bit more of a support class than a pure damage dealer. Starting with an additional 30 influence is good. It does mean that you can pretty much go and hire a new companion straight off the bat. You need a tiny bit more money, but that influence to start with will get you a new companion really, really quickly. Losing 30 experience is actually really, really minor in the scheme of things. It's not even one battle. So you fight one extra battle, 5 minutes kind of worth of your time, and you've actually negated the negative there. Okay, men escorting merchants who have lost their employer. This is a very melee heavy group. So they start with a lot of extra money. That 150 crowns is a really nice boost. Allows you to buy, a little bit of extra armor, another weapon, or a few days worth of food. So it gives you a bit more of a cushion when you're beginning the game. Losing a medicine, one medicine is worth about 25 gold, or 26 gold. So you can just basically do the math on that, and you start with about 120 extra crowns here. Again, here you've got your Swordsman and your Brute, either as a tank or a damage dealing class. You've also got the Warrior, which is again another either damage dealing class. They can be a tank. They're not quite as good at tanking as Swordsman and Brutes, so they're more of a damage dealer. And your Spearman, more of a support class again. So quite similar to the first one, starting with a little bit more money, a little bit less influence. So it'll take slightly longer to hire a new party member just because you've got to build that influence up. Deserters fleeing an abusive captain. Okay, so these guys start with 50 additional experience and a little bit of suspicion. Now, the suspicion of plus 30 is completely negligible. It means you shouldn't steal something as soon as the game begins, but most people new to the game won't know how to do that anyway, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. That 50 experience, it is more than one battle. So you're saving yourself a battle in a bit, and you'll actually get a level 2 companion pretty much straight off the bat by starting with this plus 50 experience. It does take 200 experience to go from level 1 to level 2, but at the very beginning of the game, your initial 4 companions do start with a tiny little bit of extra experience. Now, this is the exact same group of starting companions as the first option, Swordsman, Archer, Ranger, Brute, so no more to say on that. All right, young farmers looking for a better life. These guys start with 10 extra bread and lose 50 crowns. Now, technically, I think this is probably the hardest start because you could buy the equivalent of 10 bread worth of food for, off the top of my head, it would cost you maybe 60 to 80 crowns. It's not a huge amount of food to start with. It does give you a little bit more of a buffer, which is nice, but losing the crowns is actually almost completely negates this. So the bonus for this one is very, very small, if anything at all. In addition, the starting companions for this one, a brute, 2 spearmen, and an archer, are a set of companions that you need to be just a little bit more careful with. So spearmen start with quite low damage overall, and as a result, it's a much slower playing group, and it's a much more control-based group. They are very fun, and they scale well into the late game, can be used on any difficulty, guaranteed, but you will find the very beginning of the game just a little bit harder with this group compared to the others. And the last one, bandits looking to escape the guard. Plus 100 crowns and plus 65 suspicion. So, look, these guys are really good. They're one of my favorite groups to get off to a really quick start because of that double ranger. So rangers are one of the very strong DPS classes, and at level 2, they get access to a new dagger, and that dagger, a craftable weapon that is, and that dagger really increases their damage exponentially at level 2, and so this is a party that scales really well from level 2 onwards. Overall, these guys, starting with the archer as well, it works with the group. I will sometimes kick the archer out and pull someone else in just to begin with, but I actually do like adding the archer back in later on, or leaving him there from the get-go and just building the group out together. And that 100 crowns is really good. The 65 suspicion just means you don't steal anything for a little bit longer, and you're 100 crowns better off than you were before. I'm just going to choose this one randomly to show you what happens with the next screen, where you choose your companion's destiny. Now, when you choose a set of companions, this final bonus actually changes. So these guys have reduced suspicion when they thieve, men escorting merchants who lost their former employer, could sell anything to anyone. So you might want to have a little bit of a look. In general, this 5th bonus just lets you lean a little bit more heavily into which of the flavor choices you made to begin with. So let's go young farmers looking for a better life. These guys are used to being in the forest, and so get some bonus happiness. Adventure friends looking for an adventure are quick learners. They were apprentices, so makes sense. You do cap out your profession experience quite quickly, so I don't rate this bonus particularly highly. These first 4 are all the same, so reduces the speed at which your troop stacks fatigue. So this means how frequently you need to stop and rest your party, how often you need them to eat food, which is one of the larger costs in the game. So reducing your fatigue speed by 10% is actually quite strong. On easy and medium, it's probably less needed because you already have to rest less than on hard. On hard, this is definitely something that you have to factor in and think about. I will quite often take that one playing on hard, so long as I don't feel like I need this 3rd bonus, which is about additional constitution, which you can probably deduce it just increases your health by 10%. I like having that extra hit point, those extra hit points on characters in hard. Depending on the party I'm playing, it can come in really, really useful and be the difference between whether a companion lives or dies. It gives you a little bit of a buffer, so if you are starting out on this for the first time, I'd probably recommend the Constitution just to give your guys a little bit more survivability. Cunning Fighters is quite a nice one, particularly if you want to try to be a little bit more efficient and speed things up a little, or if you are planning a large party. So if you want to run a party in Wartales, you're not limited to 4 characters that you start with. You can actually build a party up to 20, 25 people strong. It depends on your ability to pay and feed them. That is the size limiter, which is really, really cool. So combat experience gain is quite good for that. However, there are other ways to boost your combat experience gains, so not strictly necessary. And being excellent at slap games, a critical damage bonus of 10% is pretty cool. There are ways to increase your critical hit chance in the game, which makes this bonus stronger, obviously, if you want to play around with high critical chance characters as well. So we'll just choose that one for now, why not? We're not going to go very far in this game at all. Okay, then you get to choose a flaw for your companions. Now, these ones are, I believe, the same regardless of party. I haven't actually double-checked that before. Let me just double-check. A serious lack of self-confidence. That's what those guys had. So it does change depending on who you are. So, again, the first four are the same. Meek appearance, reducing your companion's carry capacity. If you're planning a small party, this is minor. If you're planning a large party, it adds up. However, you can negate it pretty quickly by buying an extra pony for a little bit of crowns, a few crowns as well. Overall, this one probably has little impact past the early stages of the game. Eternal dissatisfaction, reducing your happiness by 1. Okay, so happiness is something that has been changed a little bit more recently in one of the patches, in the community update number 1, I believe, where they totally reworked happiness, so it's much simpler now. If you keep your people fed and paid, they are happy. End of story. It is really cool. I really like the changes that they made there. Reducing your happiness by 1 per rest, that is actually very minor and easy to get around. Just by assigning an extra person to sit at your campfire each rest, you'll get that happiness back, no problems. An uncommon bout of bad luck, reducing your critical hit by 3%. Definitely not the choice you want to take if you are excelling at slap games. However, most of the builds that you're doing don't rely too heavily on critical hit, so it's not a huge debuff. It is one you can live with. I prefer getting critical hits every now and again, and it's a nice little surprise seeing some nice big yellow damage numbers pop up. Okay, a hard time getting up. A danger during rest increased by 10%. So in this game, whilst you are resting and eating and recovering your fatigue so your companions can journey on, you can get attacked, depending on how dangerous the area you are resting in is. It is possible to rest in completely safe areas and not get attacked. However, if you pick this debuff, even in these safe areas, you will sometimes get attacked. I personally don't like getting attacked while I'm resting because it interrupts the flow of what I'm doing and where I'm going. So I try really hard not to get attacked during rest. There are ways to negate this 10% later in the game, but it just means that you can't use those other means to reduce the chance of getting attacked if you are in a higher danger area anyway. So overall, this is actually one that I never choose anymore. I don't want to get attacked because it just costs me extra time. And a greediness far more developed than others. Wages being paid to companions are increased. You really don't want to be paying your people more. Over the course of the game, this particular debuff will actually outweigh any of the bonus crowns you could get at the start. So really just try to choose what you might want to do there. An incredibly limited knowledge. Knowledge XP gain reduced by 10%. So knowledge is something that you use to learn new skills and new crafting recipes. Reducing the amount of knowledge XP is a pretty big deal, and losing, I won't quite say 1 out of every 10 recipes because of the way that the knowledge XP gains work. You will still lose a number of recipes. So only take this if you are planning on a very small party, so 3 to 4 people, where you don't need all the recipes in the game kind of thing. Okay, so moving on, we'll just choose an uncommon bout of bad luck because we're not really going to go very far in this run. Okay, once you've played the game a little bit more, you will be able to choose other starting regions rather than just Tiltrin, which is the first county you will start in when you begin the game. Vertruse and Arthas are the other 2 kingdoms that you may start in. Both offer a slightly different starting experience, and you definitely have to change your approach when you're beginning in these places rather than in Tiltrin. Tiltrin is definitely the most beginner-friendly place, which is why I guess they start you there. Okay, combat difficulty being on easy, normal, and hard. They give you just a little tip saying it is a challenging game and be sure to reduce it if it doesn't feel right. Now, once the game has begun, you can't change this difficulty, so have a little bit of a look. If you're used to turn-based games and role-playing, I probably would recommend either normal or hard. Leaning towards hard if you have played something like Battle Brothers, just because knowing similar game mechanics will translate into this game and it will give you an edge in playing for sure. Okay, difficulty of simulation. So what this affects is how frequently your group need to rest and how much money you need to pay them after every 3-day period. Now, the higher you put it, obviously hard is the highest at the moment as well, means you have to rest pretty much your party every single game day. So the game timing is broken down into days, weeks, and months. Every 24-hour period, if you're playing on hard, you will have to rest at least once for that 8-hour period that the resting takes. I really love that because it makes it feel exactly like, you know, my companions do a full day's work of walking and fighting and resource collecting and, you know, using their skills, and then they need to rest. It feels to me very suitable for being on hard, but it does obviously increase the challenge of the game. So feel free, play on whatever you want, maybe start lower and up it later when you're a little bit more comfortable with the game mechanics. Okay, and then save mode. So this is a little bit of a new addition again with the latest community update. A normal basically means that you have your one main save slot and an autosave. So they are taking up 2 save slots as you're progressing through the game. And if you feel like returning to town at any point, there's actually a return to the last town button available through the menu. It does remove any progress that you have made since you last visited that town, but it's kind of like a quick load sort of functionality, I guess, from your last save point. So normal works pretty well, and that's the way that the game was released initially. Free is an option they've added where you can have as many save files as you like going at once. You get to a point and you're not sure whether you want to choose choice A or choice B. In free mode, you can actually save it as I'm going to make choice A and I'm going to make choice B, and I'm going to see what the ramifications for both are. And then you can pick whichever one you like more. So free mode gives you a lot more options about how you want to play the game. And Iron Men. I kind of loved that they didn't just put Iron Man, because you're a group of companions. I guess they are calling the companions Iron Men instead of you as the player. So just a nice little thing that they did there. Okay, now once you've chosen all that, bang, we're ready to start. Except there's still one more set of customization that you need to go through. Okay, so for this last bit, it's really just trying to do those final little bits on your companion to see what you want. You can change their names, their genders, their faces, their skin tones. You've got hair, few different colors, nothing too extreme because it's not a high fantasy type game. You've got a few choices of facial hair and some small color clothing changes just around the neck piece there. Clothing color is actually something that I want to see more of. I want to be able to, you know, dye my armors and that kind of thing once my band is a little bit more well equipped, but we'll see how we go. Okay, then we're on to skills. So some characters, such as our brute, swordsman, warriors, you can choose to either start with a one-hand and shield, which deals slightly lower damage, or you can start them with a two-handed weapon, which will do slightly more damage generally and give you the ability to do more AoE attacks. So they have those options. Spearmen don't get a choice with their starting weapon, nor do archers and nor do rangers. Their starting weapons are all set in stone. The second thing below weapons is their utility skill, so this little blue one off to the right-hand side. Now, melee characters have more utility skills available than the archer. So when you're selecting your melee utility skills, you will have a few additional choices. Taunt, obviously a good one for tanks. If an enemy engages one of your allies in combat, you can use your tank to taunt them, get your other ally out of combat, possibly save their life, whilst also weakening the enemy at the same time, so reducing the amount of damage they deal for a turn. Wrath is a great one for damage dealers. So if you use Wrath, which costs a Valor point, all of these actually cost a Valor point to use, which is kind of like a pool of shared resources for extra actions that you can take. If you kill someone with Wrath, you then deal 50% extra damage on your next attack. I love this one for area of effect damage dealers, because I run in, hit someone with Wrath and take them down, and then I'm free to launch a huge attack on the remaining enemies. So it helps you snowball a fight sometimes, which is really great. First Aid is a good one for parties who are planning on playing a little bit slower. I would always recommend you take at least one First Aid in your group. I never leave this screen without having at least one character with First Aid, sometimes two. I'll normally pick it on an Archer because of their more limited pool, and a Brute is generally who I will take it on as well. All right, that's all of theirs. Now, Spearmen have all the same utility skills as Brutes. Actually, no, sorry, they do not have Taunt, and they do have Run, which allows them to disengage from combat. This is very similar to Taunt in some ways. So imagine this Spearman gets engaged. Your options are get your Spearman to run away, or you can get your Brute to Taunt, which also weakens the enemy. In both cases, you've managed to get your Spearman out of combat. In one, you've reduced the damage the enemy is dealing. In the other, you haven't. So Run is good. It is a little bit more situational, and I don't particularly love it, and not on Spearmen. I wouldn't take it on Spearmen. Again, Wrath is good for damage dealers. Spearmen are not necessarily going to be your highest damage dealers because they are more of a support class. So these guys, generally either First Aid or Wrath are my picks for Spearmen. For Archers, as I said, I normally pick First Aid up on my Archer. They do also have Aim, which is unique to the Archer tree, and Run, which works in the same way as Spearmen. Run is a little better on Archers than it is Spearmen, because if you're in melee combat, the Archer can only punch the enemy, so it really reduces the damage they can do. If they run, they then get to use their attack. So very similar to the Spearmen, they will be able to use Run to disengage, and then they also then get a better attack as a result of that. So Run is more valuable on an Archer than it is on a Spearman. So that's all of the different skills that they can get. Really, it's a little bit of personal choice. I would highly recommend picking at least one First Aid, at least one Wrath on your first playthroughs, just so you can experiment with them and figure out which characters you want to play with them on. At that point, you then get to begin the adventure and kick your party off in Wartales. So, good luck. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it taught you something that you didn't know before. And if you have any questions, or if there's anything you'd like to see in this whole customization section, from your initial party selection through to the skills that you're using at the end, let me know in the comments below or via Discord. I'm more than happy to have a chat, and have a great evening. CAG over and out.